Hello everyone. In this lesson we're going to set up the header and footer for our block theme. Let's jump into the action. So right away, if we look at the finished product of what we're trying to build, we see that yes, this is our page banner, but up here, this content, that doesn't exist in Page Banner. This is sort of the global header for the entire website. So it has the logo or the link back to the homepage, and then it has the navigation, and then our custom buttons and our custom search overlay icon. So in this video, we're going to leverage the PHP class that we set up in our previous lesson to set up this global header and down at the very bottom, the global footer. We're going to set them up as blocks that you can include in any template you want, so on and so forth. So to get started implementing those in this copy of our website or this theme that we're building, let's jump into our functions.php file. So functions.php, here we have that new placeholder block instance. Let's just set up another one. So new placeholder block, semicolon, let's give it a name of header. We can save that in our blocks folder. Let's just copy and paste and duplicate the contents of eventsandblogs.js, right? That placeholder block. So I'll just copy everything in that file, create a brand new file and name it header.js, paste in those contents. Let's change the name of the block to header. Let's change the title so the human readable can just be uppercase header. And then all we need to change is the placeholder text. So on this line, let's just change this to say header placeholder. Let's give that a save, and now we just need to create a matching PHP file. So in the our blocks folder, new file, header.php. In this new file, there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. So right now I want you to dig into the theme we created in the earlier chapter, the original fictional university theme. And in that theme folder, we're just going to open up header.php. Now, we don't want to just copy the entire file. Let's start selecting from the opening header tag that has a class of site header, and then just scroll down and just select until the header element closes. So essentially that is the entire file, but we don't need any of the doc type or the head or the body tag. So just the header element. Let's copy that. Back in our empty header.php file, just paste in your clipboard. Let's give it a save. Now, back in our template editor, we can refresh. And above our banner block, you can see I currently have this hello paragraph. Let me delete that paragraph block. And then I can use maybe this icon to insert a new block up in the top left, the blue plus symbol. And let's search for header. There's actually already a default WordPress block called header, so you could rename our title to our header, but really you'll know that it's ours because it has the generic icon. Why don't we just go ahead and change that to our header? So back in header.js, you could change this to our header or, fictional university header. Let me refresh in the template editor one more time. Let me delete that paragraph again, insert, and now I can search for header. And there it is, fictional university header. So we can just click that. Whoops, because I didn't place my cursor before I used this button, it placed it at the very bottom. That's okay. We can just use this toolbar that appears when you hover over a block and just use the up arrow. So click that a few times, or don't forget, you can always use this tool as well. This list view icon that I'm highlighting right now, you can use that. There's our fictional university header, and then you can just click and drag it to be up at the very, very top. Perfect. Cool, so we've got our placeholder, then our banner. Let's go ahead and save that and then refresh the front end of our website. Perfect. Now before we move on and set up the block for our global footer, let's first talk about the quote-unquote official way that you might have handled this header and footer block situation. Because I want to make it abundantly clear, this approach that we're taking, this is my own personal philosophy approach. This is definitely not the standard approach. The reason I'm taking my own approach is because I don't want to create a theme that is literally nothing but WordPress core default block types, right? I want to create my own custom bespoke theme with my own HTML, my own CSS, my own custom queries, so on and so forth, right? We've already talked about that topic several times. However, I do want you to be aware of the way that you would handle sort of a global header and a global footer if you were building a theme that was more like the 2022 default theme. So let me show you something. If you open up the 2022 default theme, here it is. I just want you to be aware that you can have a folder in your theme called parts. So inside of the 2022 theme, you'll see that in that folder, they have something called, for example, header.html, footer.html. Let's look at header. So there's nothing new here. This is literally the exact same thing that you would find in a template file, right? It's the HTML comments that represent Gutenberg block types. These are all just default WordPress block types. The idea is that you can have a combination of all of them in this part file, and then you can include one of these parts files in one of your main template files. So for example, if you look in the templates folder and open up any of these, for example, archive.html, you'll notice that the very first comment is just saying, hey, pull in the global header. It's called a template part. Pull in the one called header. So that's going to pull in this file, header.html. So anyways, I just want you to be aware of this sort of quote unquote standard or official way of setting up sort of a global header and footer. Personally, with my own philosophy and the way that I use WordPress and the way that my clients want to use WordPress, I don't see much use at all in setting up template parts, because at the end of the day, it's still nothing but just default block types, right? If I'm going to be creating my own custom bespoke HTML and CSS, then I'm not going to have, tons of different blocks all laid out in my global header file. I'm probably just going to have that one header block that you and I just set up. Anyways, big picture, there's 100 different ways that you could organize your code. This was just something I wanted you to be aware of. At this point, let's switch gears back to our block theme that we're building, and let's go set up a block for our global footer. So if we look at the finished product of what we're trying to set up, it'll look something like this. So let's just go into our functions.php file, and just to be clear, I'm back in our block theme that we're building in this chapter, and let's just set up a new instance of our new class. So new placeholder block, semicolon, give it a string of text of just footer. Now we can just, to save a lot of typing, just duplicate everything in header.js into your clipboard, create a new file in our blocks. Let's name it footer.js. Paste in your clipboard. Just change this block name to footer. Let's change the human readable name to fictional university footer. Finally, just change the placeholder value to say footer placeholder. Give that a save. We do want to create a new file named footer.php. Now in this file, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just jump into the original fictional university theme, open up footer.php, and in this file, just select the entire footer element that has a class of site footer. So from this opening footer tag down to right here when it closes, we absolutely do not need the PHP tag or the body tag or the HTML tag. Just the HTML footer element. So copy all of that into our clipboard, back in our block theme, footer.php, paste in your clipboard, give it a save, and we're ready to test it out. So in our template editor, let's refresh. Down at the very bottom here, let me insert a new block. Let's search for the word footer. There it is, fictional university footer. There's the placeholder. Let's give this a save. And if we go refresh our front end and then scroll down to the bottom, perfect. And for the final step in this video, and this has nothing to do with WordPress or programming, but I'm going to take a minute or two to set up the original headline text values for the banner. So back in the editor, this first large headline would be welcome, and then we'd want a medium-sized headline that says, we think you'll like it here. Then I want a generic heading of the small size. Let me push that up to right there. And it should say, why don't you check out the major you're interested in? Maybe I'll make the word major bold. And then the button should say, find your major. Let's save this. And if we refresh the front end, Cool, let's choose a different background image really quick. And let's make sure that this button actually points where we want it to. So we want it to go to /programs. If you actually tried to visit our programs page right now, you wouldn't see the content, and that's just because we haven't set up, the equivalent page.php template. In our case, because we're building a block theme, it would be page.html. We haven't set that up. We will in just about a lesson or two. But that doesn't change the fact that we would absolutely want this button to point towards /programs. So how would we set that up? Well, you can just click on the button, use this link icon right here. Now, typically you'd search for a page or post, right? So for example, if you search for the word About Us, we have a page called About Us. And as soon as you clicked on that, well, that'll give you a value that will absolutely work. In our case, there is no page or post named programs. That's just the slug for our custom post type. So I'm just going to type in /programs, and then this was the confusing part. You actually have to push enter on your keyboard to actually use that as the value. Now, if your WordPress installation doesn't live at the root of your domain, you could just include the full HTTP domain address here instead of just /. Either way, I'll click confirm. We can save that. If I refresh, in the bottom left corner when I hover over this button, perfect. It's going to take me to /programs. Now, let's talk about what we're going to do in our next lesson. Before we use this PHP placeholder block approach that we used for our header and footer, so before we use that on the remaining portions of our block theme, I first want to set up one last piece of interactive JSX block functionality. And what I'm referring to is our slideshow. So if we look at the finished product in this tab, I want our end users of this block theme to be able to add a slideshow like this to any page, any post, and any template, wherever they see fit. And they could even have multiple slideshows per page. The good news is we can recycle our generic heading and our generic button blocks. Whoops, in the finished product that I was just showing you, I had forgot to add the button to each slideshow, but you get the idea. So we can reuse our heading and button blocks. And in terms of the background image area, well, we can reuse at least 80 to 90% of our banner block. I think this will be a fun feature to build, so let's keep our momentum rolling, and I'll see you then.